As I held my dying father's hand in those early hours of an October morning, I never imagined that his last words would destroy my marriage of 23 years and reveal a betrayal so deep it would make me question every moment lived beside the woman sleeping in my bed. Before I continue, subscribe and hit the bell icon because we publish new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city and state you're watching from. My name is Arthur Miller. I am 52 years old, and I have worked as an industrial engineer in Chicago for the past 27 years. For more than 2 decades, I built what I believed was a solid marriage with Vanessa Sanders, a 8-year-old woman I met at a company holiday party in July of 2001. We got married on the 15th of March 2002, exactly 23 years and 7 months before my world fell apart. Our life was, at least in appearance, comfortable and predictable. I worked between 50 and 60 hours a week supervising industrial construction projects, earning approximately $135,000 annually. Vanessa left her job as an administrative assistant 3 years after we married, arguing that she preferred to take care of the home, even though we never had children. Honestly, I never questioned that decision. I trusted her completely. My father, Salvador Sal Miller, was 76 years old and had been a widower for 8 years since my mother passed away from a sudden heart attack. Dad lived alone in a modest apartment in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, maintaining his independence with admirable dignity. We visited each other every Sunday for lunch, a tradition we maintained religiously for years. He was a reserved but affectionate man, the kind who demonstrates love with actions rather than words. Everything changed on Tuesday, the 12th of March 2024. I received a call at 10:15 the morning from Dr. Reynolds, an oncologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The words were direct and devastating. "Your father has advanced pancreatic cancer. He has between 4 and 6 months to live, Mr. Miller." I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. I left the office without telling anyone. I drove to the hospital with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I found Dad sitting on the exam table with that serene expression he always maintained, even in the face of the worst news. He hugged me and simply said, "Calm down, son. We all have to go someday." The following days were a whirlwind of medical decisions. Palliative chemotherapy would cost approximately $5,500 a month out of pocket for the specialized care not fully covered by insurance. Pain management treatments, home nursing visits, specialized medications, it all added up. Dad had his Social Security check of $1,800 a month and some savings, but clearly, it wouldn't be enough. I proposed that he come live with us. We had a 3-bedroom house in Naperville that we bought in 2009 for $450,000, which was already completely paid off. The guest room was practically empty, only used when my sister Monica visited from New York twice a year. Vanessa's reaction surprised me, although at that moment I didn't know how to interpret the signs. When I communicated the decision to her that night during dinner, her fork hovered halfway to her mouth. There was an uncomfortable silence of several seconds before she responded. "Your father is going to live here?" she asked with a tone I couldn't completely decipher. "For how long?" "The doctor says between 4 and 6 months, I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "He needs constant care, Vanessa. I can't leave him alone in his apartment." She dropped her fork onto her plate with more force than necessary. "Art, have you thought about a specialized nursing home? There are places with medical staff 24 hours a day. It would be better for him." Those words hurt me more than I wanted to admit. He's my father, not a stranger. He's staying here, and that's final. My voice sounded harder than usual. Vanessa sighed dramatically. Okay, I was just thinking of what's best for everyone." Dad moved in with us on the 22nd of March 2024, a rainy Friday that I remember with painful clarity. He brought 2 suitcases with clothes, some photographs of Mom, his favorite books, and a dignity he never lost, not even in the worst moments. We set up his bed in the guest room. We placed a comfortable armchair by the window where he liked to read in the afternoons. During the first few months, I dedicated myself to caring for him with the intensity of someone who knows time is limited. I adjusted my work schedule, leaving the office at 4 p.m. to be with him. We ate dinner together, watched old movies he loved, and talked about memories from my childhood. They were bittersweet months, painful, but also precious. Vanessa, however, began to show a growing impatience that I, blinded by grief and worry, attributed to the stress of the situation. Small comments here and there. The smell of medicine gives me a headache. We can't have guests over with your father here. This is affecting our marriage. In July, when the accumulated medical expenses exceeded $40,000, Vanessa confronted me directly one night while I was organizing bills in the dining room. "Arthur, this can't go on," she said with her arms crossed. "We are spending a fortune. Have you thought that maybe it would be more humane to let him go peacefully in a hospice facility?" I looked at her in disbelief. "Did you just suggest that I abandon my dying father in a hospice to save money?" "I'm not saying it in a bad way," she defended herself. "Just that $5,000 a month is a lot of money, Arthur. Money we could be using for us, for our future." That conversation ended in a cold argument. No shouting, but a palpable distancing. I slept on the sofa that night, telling myself that she simply didn't understand what it meant to watch your father die slowly. I never suspected that behind that impatience lay something much darker. I never imagined that while I watched over Dad's restless sleep every early morning, she was calculating how much time was left before he died so she could execute a plan she had been silently brewing for years. The following months were a progressive deterioration. Dad lost 40 pounds, his skin acquired that characteristic yellowish tone. The pain became constant despite the morphine, but his mind remained lucid until the end, observing everything with those tired but attentive eyes that I inherited. And it was that lucidity that would save me from complete destruction. The early morning of Tuesday, the 14th of October, 2024, will be etched in my memory with the painful precision of a photograph you can't stop looking at, even though it destroys you inside. Dad had been in agony for 3 days. Irregular breathing, periods of unconsciousness becoming longer, quiet moans that broke my soul. Dr. Reynolds had come on Sunday afternoon and pronounced those words no son wants to hear. "It's a matter of hours, maybe 2 days at most. Keep him comfortable." I called my sister Monica on Monday morning. She took the first flight from JFK, arriving at 3:15 the afternoon, eyes swollen and carrying a small suitcase. We took turns by Dad's bedside, holding his hands, whispering words of love and gratitude that we hoped would reach him through the fog of morphine. Vanessa remained distant during those final days. She entered the room only when strictly necessary. She stood by the doorway with an uncomfortable expression. She left quickly with excuses about making tea or making phone calls. At that moment, I interpreted it as discomfort in the face of death, something understandable in people who have never accompanied a loved one in their final hours. How wrong I was. At 3:00 the morning, the change was evident. Dad's breathing became shallow, irregular, with long pauses that made us hold our breath, wondering if every exhalation would be the last. Monica was sobbing quietly, sitting on the other side of the bed. I held Dad's right hand, feeling how his fingers, once strong and hard-working, were now nothing more than fragile bones covered in translucent skin. Vanessa was at the back of the room, leaning against the wall near the window. I remember feeling a pang of annoyance at her detachment, but it was immediately stifled by the pain of seeing Dad fighting for every breath. At 3:32 a.m., Dad opened his eyes suddenly. It was surprising after almost 8 hours of unconsciousness. His pupils took a few seconds to focus, searching for my face with an almost desperate urgency. "Son," he whispered with a voice so weak I had to bring my ear to his lips to hear him. "I'm here, Dad. I'm here with you." Tears rolled down my cheeks uncontrollably. His hand squeezed mine with surprising strength considering his state. He looked me directly in the eyes, and in that look, there was something more than a farewell. There was a warning. There was concern. There was an urgent message he needed to convey before it was too late. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward where Vanessa was. The movement cost him visible effort. His neck trembled from weakness, but he managed to fix his eyes directly on her, piercing her with an intensity that froze my blood. Vanessa straightened up against the wall. The phone almost fell from her hands. Her face paled visibly, even under the dim light of the bedside lamp. Something passed between them in that moment. A silent communication that I didn't understand, but that was unequivocally hostile. "Van," Dad said with a hoarse but clear voice, clearer than he had spoken in days. The effort provoked a spasm of dry coughing. He waited, recovered his breath, and continued with every word measured and deliberate. "You're finally going to get what you want, Vanessa." The silence that followed was absolute. Monica stopped sobbing. I stood paralyzed, holding Dad's hand. Vanessa opened her mouth as if to respond, but no sound came out. Dad continued, and although his voice was weak, every word fell like a sentence. "But you don't know what awaits you. You have no idea what awaits you." A strange smile, almost ghostly, crossed his gaunt face. It wasn't kindness, it was something darker, more knowing. It was the smile of someone who has seen the end of the movie and knows the villain won't win. "Dad, what are you saying?" I asked, confused, looking between him and Vanessa. "What are you talking about?" But Dad had already turned his attention back to me. With his left hand, the one Monica wasn't holding, he made a weak gesture toward the nightstand. "Drawer," he whispered. "White envelope. Read it when you are alone, son. Only you. Read it when you are completely alone." "Dad, I don't understand." My voice broke. "Promise me. Read it alone. It's important." His grip intensified with a final urgency. "Trust me one last time, Arthur. Please." "I promise," I whispered, understanding nothing but unable to deny him anything in those final moments. He nodded slightly, satisfied. Then his gaze softened, turning toward Monica. "Take care of your brother, my beautiful girl. He is going to need you soon." "Yes, Dad, I will," she sobbed, kissing his hand repeatedly. Dad looked at me one last time. "I love you, son. I will always be proud of the man you became. And forgive me." "Forgive you for what?" I asked desperately. "For not seeing it sooner. For not acting sooner." His voice was barely a whisper now. "But it's all there now. Everything. Use the information wisely." His eyes began to close. His breathing became shallow, spaced out. At 3:47 a.m., Salvador Miller exhaled his last breath. There was no drama, no convulsions. He simply stopped breathing, and the hand holding mine became completely still. The pain I felt in that instant was indescribable. I bowed my head onto his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Monica collapsed onto the bed, crying bitterly. The world had stopped. In the midst of my grief, I managed to hear rapid footsteps. I looked up just in time to see Vanessa leaving the room hurriedly, almost running. Her face was as white as paper. Her hands were shaking visibly. I didn't pay her much attention at that moment. My father had just died, and everything else seemed insignificant in the face of that devastating reality. It was Monica and I who closed his eyes, who arranged his body with respect, who called the funeral home. Vanessa did not return to the room. When I finally came out 2 hours later to call the funeral director, I found her in the kitchen, sitting in the dark, staring at the wall. "Are you okay?" I asked automatically, though my own voice sounded hollow. She started, as if she hadn't heard me enter. "Yes. I just needed air. I'm sorry." She got up quickly and headed to the bedroom without meeting my eyes. Throughout that terrible day, while we organized the funeral, while we received condolences from family and friends, while we chose the casket and flowers, Dad's last words resonated in my mind like a disturbing echo. "You're finally going to get what you want." What had he meant, and why had it sounded like a veiled threat? The white envelope remained in the nightstand drawer, waiting. Dad had made me promise to read it alone, completely alone. That promise was the only thing stopping me from opening it immediately. It would have to wait. But something inside me, a small, insistent voice that had been silent for 23 years, began to whisper that nothing would ever be the same after reading what that envelope contained. The funeral was held on Friday, October 18, at a funeral home in Chicago. 132 people attended, many more than I anticipated. Dad's former co-workers from when he worked at the utility company, neighbors from the old Lincoln Park neighborhood, friends from the community center Domino Club, distant cousins I hadn't seen since my adolescence. Everyone shared anecdotes about Salvador Miller, that discreet man who had apparently touched more lives than I knew. Vanessa was present, but strangely absent. She wore an appropriate black suit, greeted those offering condolences correctly, but her eyes seemed to be elsewhere. At one point, around 11:20 a.m., I saw her checking her cell phone behind a pillar. When our eyes met, she put the device away quickly with a guilty expression. Monica noticed it too. "Is Vanessa okay?" she asked me in a low voice while we watched the mahogany casket we had chosen. "She looks very nervous." "We're all processing this differently," I responded automatically, although her words planted a seed of doubt. That night, Monica returned to New York on the last flight out of O'Hare. She hugged me for a long time at the departure curb. "Call me if you need anything, Art. Anything." There was genuine concern in her voice, as if she perceived something I couldn't see yet. I arrived home past 11 p.m. The house was silent. Vanessa had left a note in the kitchen. I took a Xanax. "I need to sleep. Don't wake me." Her handwriting, usually perfect, looked rushed, almost shaky. I entered the room that had been Dad's for these 7 months. It still smelled of him, that mix of Old Spice aftershave and medicines that had become familiar. The bed was made, his belongings organized in boxes that we would eventually have to go through. Everything seemed suspended in time. I sat in the armchair by the window where he liked to read in the afternoons. Dad's last words echoed in my mind with obsessive intensity. "You're finally going to get what you want, Vanessa, but you don't know what awaits you." And then, addressing me, "Read it when you are alone, son. Only you." I looked toward the nightstand. The white envelope was still there, exactly where Dad had pointed minutes before dying. For 3 days I had respected his request not to open it until I was completely alone. Now, with Vanessa asleep thanks to the sedative and the house plunged into silence, the moment had arrived. I approached with slow steps, almost irreverent. The envelope was legal size, sealed with clear tape. On the front, in Dad's shaky handwriting, it simply said, "For Arthur, urgent and confidential." I opened it with hands that trembled slightly. Inside were 2 things: several sheets of folded paper covered in Dad's irregular handwriting, and a small black USB drive. I unfolded the pages and began to read. It was dated Sunday, October 6, just 8 days before his death. "My son, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you these things in person, but I needed concrete proof before destroying your world with accusations. What I am about to reveal to you will hurt more than my own death, and believe me, that breaks my heart, but as a father, my duty is to protect you even after I'm gone." A chill ran down my spine. I continued reading. "On Tuesday, August 14, exactly 2 months ago, I woke up from a nap around 4 p.m. I heard Vanessa talking on the phone in the hallway, right outside my room. I suppose she thought I was sleeping deeply due to the medication. Her voice sounded different, sweet and flirtatious, in a way I had never heard her use with you. My hands began to sweat. I kept reading. Every word was like a nail penetrating my chest. I heard fragments of her conversation. "When the old man dies, everything will be easier, my love. Arthur will inherit the apartment in the city and some money. I'll be able to pressure him to put everything in my name before the divorce." That word divorce froze my blood. She kept talking. "He is too naive. He will never suspect anything. In March we will be free and with enough money to start over together." I had to stop. I reread the paragraph 4 times, convincing myself I hadn't misinterpreted the words. "Divorce," I whispered in the empty room. "Together." The letter continued with increasingly irregular handwriting, as if Dad had been trembling while writing. "That same afternoon, while Vanessa went out shopping, I searched your room. Forgive me for invading your privacy, but I needed to understand. I found bank statements on your desk. I reviewed the transactions from the last 18 months and discovered inexplicable withdrawals. Small amounts, never more than $500, but constant. In January 2023, they started. $300 here, $400 there. I added it up mentally, and the figure exceeded $30,000 in total. I felt nauseous. I vaguely remembered those withdrawals. Vanessa always had reasonable explanations. I bought clothes on sale. I needed to fix the car. I paid the dentist. I never asked for receipts. I trusted blindly. I decided to act, son. I bought a small digital voice recorder at an electronics shop. It cost $60. I hid it inside the antique alarm clock I have on my nightstand, the one your mother gave me 30 years ago. No one would suspect that old clock. I programmed it to record from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day, the period when I am usually asleep or reading in silence. I looked at the alarm clock mentioned. It was still there, a gold analog citizen clock with a white face. It looked completely innocent. For 2 months, I recorded everything. Vanessa made long phone calls when she believed I was unconscious. She spoke with someone named Bruno. The conversations were explicit, loving, strategic. They spoke of you with contempt, Arthur. She called you the workaholic idiot and my ticket out. They planned your destruction while you worked 70 hours a week to maintain this home. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. I wasn't sobbing. I was simply crying in silence while I read. On the USB drive accompanying this letter, you will find 14 audio files. I have edited them to include only the relevant parts. It is approximately 4 hours of recording in total. Listen to them when you have emotional strength. But listen to them all. You need to know exactly who the woman is with whom you shared 23 years of your life. The letter ended with a farewell that shattered me. My son, forgive me for leaving you with this burden. I considered telling you in person, but I feared the shock would make you act impulsively. Now that I am not there, you can process this calmly and plan your steps wisely. Do not act for revenge. Act for justice. Protect yourself legally and financially. And always remember, it is not your fault for having trusted. The fault lies with the one who betrayed that trust. I love you more than words can express. Take care, Dad. I sat in that chair for a full 15 minutes, looking at the pages shaking in my hands. Part of me wanted to believe Dad was confused by the medication, that he had misinterpreted innocent conversations. But another darker and more realistic part knew that Salvador Miller had been a lucid man until the end. I looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. I still had time before Vanessa woke up. I plugged the USB drive into the laptop I kept on Dad's desk. 14 files appeared, labeled with dates from August 14 to October 10. The most recent was just 4 days before his death. With a trembling hand, I double-clicked on the first one. Vanessa's voice filled the room through the headphones, clear, sharp, unmistakable. Bruno, my love, the old man is worse every day. The doctors say 2 months max. I need you to be patient a little longer. Yes, after this we will be free. Arthur already signed the power of attorney so I can handle his accounts if something happens to him. The naive fool thinks it's for precaution. When the time comes, I'll transfer everything before asking him for the divorce. I heard myself vomit. Literally. I ran to the bathroom of that room and vomited violently. The contents of my stomach, the bile, everything, came out as my body rejected the reality I had just discovered. I spent 40 minutes in that bathroom vomiting, crying, hitting the tiles with my fists. 23 years. 23 years of my life given to a lie. When I finally came out, dawn was beginning to light up Chicago. I had 13 more files to listen to and a crucial decision to make. Did I confront her immediately, or play the same game she had been playing? Dad had advised wisdom over impulse. While I looked toward the room where Vanessa slept peacefully after a sedative, I knew what I had to do. She had played this game for years in secret. Now it was my turn to play, and this time, I had all the cards. The days following the funeral passed in a surreal haze, where I played the role of the grieving widower while my inner world crumbled piece by piece. Every morning I got up, showered, dressed, and pretended to be the same Arthur Miller I had been for 52 years. But inside, something fundamental had broken irreparably. I listened to the 14 audio files over 3 consecutive nights, always after midnight when Vanessa slept deeply. Each recording was an additional blow to an already shattered heart. In the recording from August 26, she told Bruno about my pathetic attempts to be romantic on our anniversary. In the one from September 3, she laughed about how I had cried watching a touching movie. In the one from September 22, they discussed the best date to start the divorce process. February is perfect. It will have been 4 months since his death, and I won't look like an insensitive witch. That calculating coldness turned my stomach more than the infidelity itself. She had planned to time my grief, measure my mourning, and use my own father's death as cover to destroy me financially. On Monday, October 21, I returned to work. My colleagues received me with sincere condolences and pats on the back. "Take your time, Art," my supervisor Henry Vance told me. "If you need more days off, just ask." I accepted with fake gratitude, when in reality work was the only place where I could feign normality for 8 hours. But my body began to betray me. On Tuesday night, stepping onto the bathroom scale, I discovered I had lost 6 pounds in just 8 days. My pants hung looser at the waist. The dark circles under my eyes deepened day by day. I slept between 3 and 4 hours a night, constantly waking up with fragments of the recordings echoing in my head. The idiot works 70 hours a week to give me the life I deserve. When I get the divorce, Bruno and I will move to Miami, far from this boring man. Love? I haven't felt anything for Arthur in years. Maybe I never really felt it. Every sentence was a knife twisting slowly in my chest. Vanessa noticed the changes. On Wednesday night, while I pecked without hunger at a plate of pasta she had prepared, she observed me with a worried expression that would have seemed genuine if I didn't know the truth. "Arthur, you're very thin," she commented with a tone mimicking concern. "You've barely eaten anything in days. I know you miss your father, but you have to take care of yourself." The hypocrisy of those words coming from the woman who had actively wished for his death filled me with a cold rage I had to suppress with superhuman strength. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "I just need time." She reached across the table, covering my hand with a gesture I would once have interpreted as affectionate. Now I only saw calculation and manipulation. "I'm here for you, you know that. I will always be here for you." I had to excuse myself and lock myself in the bathroom so as not to scream the truth in her face. That night, after ensuring she was asleep, I did something I had been postponing out of cowardice. I called an old college friend, Robert "Rob" Marks, now a lawyer specializing in family law. We had drifted apart over the years, but maintained sporadic contact. "Rob, I need help," I whispered from the room that had been Dad's, with the door locked. "But I need absolute discretion." There was a pause. "Art, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." "No, I'm not okay. But I need to handle this intelligently." I took a deep breath. "I need the name of a private investigator. Someone discreet, professional, who doesn't ask unnecessary questions." Another longer silence. Rob knew how to read between the lines. "Marital problems? More serious than you imagine. I'm going to give you the contact for Felix Ross. He's the best I know. Worked 15 years in the police force before going independent. Discreet as a grave and meticulous to the extreme." He paused. "Art, whatever it is, document everything before acting. In divorce cases, whoever has the proof has the power." "Thanks, Rob. I owe you big time. Just take care of yourself, buddy. And when you're ready to talk legally, call me." The next day, Tuesday, October 22, I called Felix Ross from my office during lunch hour. We agreed to meet that same afternoon at 6 p.m. at a discreet diner in Wicker Park, far from anywhere Vanessa or common acquaintances might see me. Felix turned out to be a 4-year-old man, medium build, athletic, with eyes that didn't miss a detail. He wore casual but tidy clothes, dark jeans, gray shirt, leather jacket, nothing flashy, perfectly designed to blend in. We sat at a back booth. I ordered a coffee I didn't touch. He ordered mineral water. "Mr. Miller, explain the situation," he said with a neutral, professional voice. I told him everything. Dad's last words. The letter, the recordings, the inexplicable bank withdrawals, the name Bruno that appeared repeatedly, my suspicion that there was much more I didn't know yet. Felix took notes in a small notebook without looking up. When I finished, about 20 minutes later, he finally looked directly at me. "Do you have the recordings with you?" I took the USB drive from my pocket and slid it across the table. He tucked it into his jacket. "I'm going to need information. Your wife's full name, date of birth, places she frequents, vehicle she drives, daily routines, names of close friends if you know them, shared bank accounts." He looked up. "And I need you to act completely normal for the next 3 weeks. Can you do that?" 3 weeks? I had expected faster results. A full and legal investigation takes time. Physical surveillance, tracking bank movements within legal limits, identification of associates, photographic documentation. If you want proof that holds up in court, we can't take shortcuts." He paused. "My fees are $4,000 for the first 2 weeks, plus $1,200 for each additional week if necessary. Does that seem acceptable?" It was a lot of money. It was also the best investment I would make in my life. "Go ahead." Felix nodded. "One last thing. Do not tell anyone about this investigation. No one. Not friends, not family, not colleagues. Secrecy is fundamental." "Understood?" We left the diner separately. When I got home at 8:30 p.m., Vanessa was watching TV on the sofa. She greeted me with a smile I could no longer see as genuine. "How was your day?" she asked casually. Exhausting, I replied with partial honesty. A lot of work piled up. Come, sit with me for a while. I sat beside her, feeling every inch of emotional distance as she leaned against my shoulder. She smelled of the Chanel perfume I had given her last Christmas. A gift for the woman who planned to destroy me. I love you, Art, she whispered against my neck. Those 3 words that would once have filled me with warmth now only provoked nausea. Me too, I lied. Because I had to, because Felix needed 19 days to build the case, because rushed revenge is wasted revenge. That night I lost another pound. The insomnia was constant. Now I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. and no longer recognized the man staring back at me. I had aged 10 years in 10 days, but there was also something new in those sunken eyes. Determination cold as steel. Vanessa had played her game for 3 years without me suspecting anything. Now it was my turn to play mine, and when the time came to show my cards, she would discover that underestimating the workaholic idiot had been her most costly mistake. The 19 days that followed were the longest of my existence. Every morning I got up, kissed Vanessa's cheek as I had done for 23 years, and left for work pretending that my universe hadn't fractured into 1,000 pieces. Every night I returned, we had dinner together, watched TV, and I nodded at the appropriate moments while my mind was in a completely different place. Felix had given me clear instructions. Absolutely normal behavior. No confrontations. No unusual questions. Nothing that could alert Vanessa that she was being investigated. So I acted. I acted so well I deserved an Academy Award, but my body couldn't lie. By October 30, I had lost another 4 pounds. My work shirts hung loose on my shoulders. My pants needed an extra notch on the belt not to fall down. My colleagues began to make worried comments. "Art, are you eating?" Helen, the head of HR, asked me on a Wednesday afternoon. "You look gaunt." "It's the grief," I lied, with increasing ease. "Appetite will return eventually." Vanessa noticed too, but her concern sounded hollow to my ears. "You should see a doctor, honey. You've lost a lot of weight." She said this while checking her cell phone, typing messages that I now knew were directed to Bruno Vance. The nights were particularly torturous. I slept on average 3 hours, always interrupted by nightmares where I saw Vanessa and a faceless man laughing at me. I woke up sweating, heart racing, and looked at the woman sleeping peacefully beside me, wondering how I had shared a bed with a stranger for so long without realizing it. Felix called me every 3 days with brief updates. Surveillance continues as planned. Nothing new to report yet. His voice was always neutral, professional, reassuring in its practical coldness. On Sunday, November 10, 19 days after our initial meeting, I received a text message. "Investigation complete. I have results. Same diner, tomorrow Monday, 6 p.m. Prepare yourself emotionally." That last sentence froze my blood. If Felix, an ex-cop who had seen everything, was warning me to prepare emotionally, it meant what he had discovered was devastating. On Monday, November 11, I left work at 5:15 p.m. I told Vanessa I had a last-minute meeting with a client. She barely looked up from her phone. "Okay, I won't be home for dinner. I have yoga class at 7. A yoga class I suspected didn't exist. I arrived at the Wicker Park Diner 15 minutes before the agreed time. I ordered a cortado I didn't drink and waited with sweating hands and a churning stomach. Felix appeared promptly at 6 on the dot. He carried a black leather briefcase that he placed on the table with almost ceremonial care. "Mr. Miller," he began without preamble, "the investigation is complete. What I am going to show you is difficult to process, but you need to see everything." He opened the briefcase and extracted a thick manila folder. Inside were documents, photographs, printed statements. He organized everything methodically in front of me. "Let's start with the man," Felix said, placing several photographs on the table. Bruno Vance, 45 years old, textile import, export businessman. Offices in the Loop. Company registered as Mediterranean Textiles, LLC. Annual revenue, approximately $1.5 million. Divorced 6 years ago. No children. The photographs showed an attractive man, black hair slicked back, expensive suits, confident smile, the type of man who exudes success and charisma. The opposite of me, the ordinary-looking workaholic engineer. Your wife and Mr. Vance met on the 14th of June 2021 during a business networking event at the Palmer House Hilton. She attended using her maiden name, introducing herself as an independent consultant. The relationship began that same night. I have photographic documentation of their first intimate encounter at Mr. Vance's apartment on June 19. 3 years, 4 months, and 22 days of extramarital relationship. Felix paused, allowing me to absorb that information. 3 years. More than a quarter of our marriage had been a complete farce. Frequency of encounters. Average of twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m., coincides with the schedule you indicated being at work. He slid more photographs. Vanessa entering Bruno's building. Vanessa leaving hours later fixing her hair. Vanessa kissing him passionately in the doorway. Every image was a dagger. Now the financial part, Felix continued, his voice remaining neutral. Despite the devastating information, your wife has siphoned a total of $42,000 from the joint account over the last 21 months. It started in January 2023 with small withdrawals, $300, $400, $500. Gradually, she increased the amounts. He placed bank statements marked with a yellow highlighter. Withdrawals were always made in cash at ATMs in different locations. Deliberate strategy to avoid an obvious pattern. He pointed to a separate sheet. This money was deposited into an account she opened at Chase Bank on the 28th of December, 2022. Individual account only in her name. Current balance, $34,000. I made quick mental calculations. There's $8,000 missing spent, Felix confirmed. Gifts for Mr. Vance. An Omega watch worth $4,000 bought last March. Dinners at expensive restaurants. Clothes. A weekend getaway to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in August, which she told you was a spa retreat with girlfriends. I remembered that weekend. I had worked all Saturday and Sunday on an urgent project, happy that she had time to relax. There is more, Felix said, his tone becoming even more serious. I intercepted electronic communications within legal limits, emails between your wife and Mr. Vance discussing specific plans for after the divorce. Target date, February 2025. Strategy. Wait 4 months after your father's death so as not to seem insensitive, then initiate legal proceedings. He slid printouts of emails. I read them with trembling hands. Bruno, love, only 3 more months of this charade. In February, I'll ask for the divorce. I already consulted a lawyer discreetly. With current laws, I'm entitled to at least 50% of everything. The house is worth $600,000, the condo in Miami, another $450,000, plus his retirement accounts and savings. We are talking about over $500,000 for me. Enough to start our life together without worries. Another email dated October 28. The idiot is so consumed by grief he doesn't even notice when I come home late. Perfect. Less suspicion. By March, we will be in our house in Miami, far from this mediocre life. I stared at those words. Mediocre life. 23 years reduced to that contemptuous phrase. Mr. Miller, there is an additional element you need to know, Felix said with an even graver tone. Your wife and Mr. Vance discussed the possibility of accelerating your father's passing. I looked up sharply. What? I found an exchange of WhatsApp messages from August 31. Mr. Vance asked if there was no way to increase the morphine dose to speed up the inevitable. Your wife responded that she had considered it, but it was too risky, that an autopsy could reveal an overdose. They decided to wait for the natural course. I felt like I was going to vomit right there in the diner. They had discussed killing my father. They didn't do it out of fear of being caught, not out of compassion or morality. I need a moment, I whispered, getting up abruptly. I ran to the restroom of the diner and vomited violently, yellow bile, the only thing in my empty stomach. When I returned to the table 10 minutes later, Felix had ordered mineral water for both of us. He waited for me patiently. I'm sorry, I murmured. Don't apologize. Your reaction is completely understandable. He closed the folder. I have 47 photographs documenting the relationship, 8 audio recordings of phone conversations captured legally, complete bank statements from both accounts, printed copies of 19 emails and 53 WhatsApp messages, all obtained within legal margins, admissible in court. He handed me a second USB drive. Everything is here. Digital copies organized by categories. My recommendation: consult immediately with a lawyer specializing in family law. Do not confront your wife until you have a clear legal strategy. How much do I owe you? I asked with a dead voice. It was 19 days, $4,000 agreed, plus $600 for the partial additional week, total $4,600. I took out my personal checkbook, the one Vanessa couldn't access. I wrote a check for $6,000. The extra $1,400 is for your professionalism. Felix accepted the check with a grateful nod. One last thing, Mr. Miller. What you do with this information is your decision. But do it with a cool head, not a hot heart. Emotional revenge ends badly. Strategic justice ends well. That night, I arrived home at 8:15. Vanessa was on the sofa, hair damp from the supposed yoga class, watching a cooking show. How was the meeting? She asked, without looking away from the TV. Productive, I replied. Very productive. I went up to the bedroom. I weighed myself. Another 6 pounds gone. 52 years old, 5'10" tall. Now I weighed only 156 pounds. I had lost nearly 20 pounds in less than a month. But while I looked at my gaunt reflection in the mirror, I saw something beyond weight loss. I saw clarity. I saw a man who finally understood the entire game board. Vanessa had been playing chess while I thought we were playing checkers. Now I knew every one of her pieces, every planned move, and I was about to put her in checkmate. On Tuesday, November 12, a day after my meeting with Felix, I requested an appointment with Julian O'Connell, the lawyer Rob had recommended weeks ago. His firm was located in a sleek office near Michigan Avenue. I arrived at 4 p.m. with the briefcase containing all the documentation Felix had compiled. Julian was 58 years old, gray hair, perfectly combed, impeccable navy blue suit, and a look that had seen 1,000 marital tragedies. He received me with a firm handshake and led me to his private office. Rob told me your case was delicate, he began, pointing to the chair in front of his mahogany desk. Tell me everything from the beginning. For the next hour, I related every detail chronologically. Dad's last words, the recordings, Felix's investigation, the $42,000 siphoned, the 3 years of infidelity with Bruno Vance. Julian took meticulous notes, interrupting occasionally to clarify dates or specific amounts. When I finished, he extended his hand. Show me the documentation. I opened the briefcase and placed the organized folders on his desk. Photographs, bank statements, message transcripts, Felix's reports. Julian reviewed every page with absolute concentration. The silence stretched for 20 minutes while he read, noted, verified dates. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Miller, you have an extremely solid case. Adultery proven photographically, diversion of funds documented with bank statements, premeditated planning evidenced in written communications. He paused. But I need to ask you something important. Is there any asset or property that is solely in your wife's name? My stomach tightened. The condo in Miami. Julian put down his pen. Explain that in detail. And then I remembered March 2022, almost 3 years ago. Vanessa had arrived one afternoon with printed brochures from a tax consultancy. She sat with me in the dining room with a worried expression that I then interpreted as genuine. Arthur, I've been researching estate planning and inheritance, she had said, unfolding documents with charts and percentages. If something happened to you, the estate taxes would be huge. We could lose up to 40% of the value of our assets. I was absorbed in work problems from a complicated project in Joliet. I barely paid attention. And what do you suggest? Transfer the Miami apartment to my name. Legally, it would still be marital property, but fiscally, we would optimize the tax burden. Plus, if I inherited first by it being in my name, then you would inherit with a lower tax burden. She showed me calculations that seemed logical on paper. We could save up to $80,000 in taxes. Eventually, it had sounded reasonable. I trusted her absolutely. Okay, do the necessary paperwork. I need you to sign this quitclaim deed, she had said, extracting documents supposedly prepared by a lawyer. It's pure legal formalism. I signed without reading completely, a mistake that would now haunt me. Did you sign a deed before a notary? Julian asked with a grave tone. Yes, at a title company on Clark Street. I don't remember the exact name. Julian wrote quickly. I need a certified copy of that deed urgently. Do you remember the approximate date? March 2022, between the 10th and the 20th, I think. I'll get that deed tomorrow. Julian leaned back in his chair. Mr. Miller, if that apartment is exclusively in her name and there is a recorded deed, legally it belongs to her completely. In a divorce due to adultery, typically we would recover assets diverted fraudulently, but a voluntary notarized transfer is different. I felt nausea rising. Are you saying I lost a $450,000 apartment? Possibly. Depends on the exact terms of the deed and if we can prove there was deceit or coercion. He paused. But there is something else I need to investigate. If she plans to sell it before the divorce. I sat up abruptly. Felix mentioned something about a sale in his preliminary notes, but didn't go deep. I searched the USB drive Felix had given me, opening the folder of miscellaneous documents. There it was, a photograph of a preliminary sales contract. Vanessa Sanders, selling the apartment located on Ocean Drive, Miami Beach, for a price of $425,000. Date of contract, the 12th of September 2024. Closing date agreed, the 15th of February 2025. Here, I said, turning the laptop toward Julian. She signed a sale 2 months ago. Julian read the document with growing interest. Preliminary private contract with a deposit of $15,000 already paid according to this attached receipt. Final closing agreed for next February. He looked up with an expression mixing professional indignation and strategic satisfaction. Mr. Miller, this changes everything. If she is selling marital property without your knowledge or consent, that constitutes direct fraud. But the apartment is in her name, I objected, confused. Acquired during the marriage with marital funds, Julian corrected. The subsequent transfer does not eliminate the origin of the asset. If we manage to demonstrate that the original transfer was through deceit and that she is now attempting to sell fraudulently to pocket the money before the divorce. Julian smiled coldly. We have grounds to annul both the transfer and the sale and recover the asset completely for you. For the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling hope. What do I need to do? I asked. First, document everything about the apartment. Original purchase deeds from 2009, proof of source of funds, the 2022 transfer, this preliminary contract. Second, legally notify the buyer that the sale is fraudulent before it closes in February. Third, initiate divorce proceedings immediately before she gets ahead. Immediately? Shouldn't we wait? Julian shook his head emphatically. February is only 3 months away. If we wait longer and she manages to close that sale, recovering the funds will be a long and expensive legal battle. Whoever files first controls the judicial narrative. We need to move now. I felt vertigo. Everything was accelerating in ways I hadn't anticipated. How much time do you need to prepare everything? Give me 2 weeks to build the full case. I'll get the deeds, prepare the divorce petition, coordinate notification to the apartment buyer. I'll organize all the evidence of adultery and diversion of funds in judicial format. Julian looked directly at me. But you need to do something crucial in that period. What? Protect your liquid assets, joint bank account, shared credit cards, any funds accessible to her. As soon as I file the petition, she will try to drain everything she can. We need to move your money preemptively to an individual account. Is that legal? Completely legal to transfer your portion of marital funds to a personal account. 50% legally corresponds to you. The problem would be if you transferred 100%, but no one does that because it would be obvious. Transfer gradually, let's say $25,000 a week for 3 weeks. It will look like normal movement of funds. The morality of that maneuver made me uncomfortable, but I remembered Felix's words. Strategic justice, not emotional revenge. I'll do it. I accepted. I left Julian's office at 6:15 with a clear action plan but a churning stomach. As I walked to the L train, my phone vibrated. Text from Vanessa, running late, dinner with Sylvia. Don't wait up. Sylvia was an imaginary friend. She would be with Bruno at his apartment in the Loop, planning a future with my money while I unraveled her web of lies. That night, alone at home, I reviewed again the messages Felix had recovered. One in particular, dated October 28, destroyed me once again. Bruno, love. In March we will be free and rich. The Miami apartment will give me $425,000 clean, plus my half of the Chicago house, another $300,000. nearly $750,000 to start our life. Far from Arthur, far from his boring, mediocre engineer life, you and me in our house by the sea. Boring life. Mediocre engineer. 23 years of honest work, of providing, of loving sincerely, reduced to those contemptuous phrases. Something inside me hardened that night. It wasn't explosive rage, it was determination, cold as marble. Vanessa had calculated my destruction with mathematical precision. Now I would calculate hers with the same coldness. I weighed myself before sleeping. Another 2 pounds down, 154 pounds exact. I had lost nearly 20 pounds in 4 weeks. But while I looked at my gaunt reflection, I saw absolute clarity. The next 2 weeks would be a perfect performance, and then the curtain would fall on her farce so devastatingly she would never underestimate me again. Julian's instructions were clear. Transfer gradually $25,000 weekly from the joint account to my new personal account that I opened on Wednesday, November 13, at a Citibank branch downtown. 4 weeks, 4 transfers, $100,000 total. My legitimate half of the family savings we had accumulated over more than 2 decades. I executed the first transfer on Friday, November 15, at 11 a.m. from my work computer. $25,000 exact. My finger trembled over the confirmation button for 5 full seconds before pressing it. There was no turning back. After that click, the transaction was processed instantly. I watched as the joint account balance dropped from $260,000 to $235,000. Technically not theft. Legally my right. Morally, I felt like a thief. I closed the banking session and breathed deeply. First move executed. Vanessa checked the bank statements every 2 or 3 weeks, typically, always on Sunday mornings with her coffee. I had time before she noticed anything. That afternoon, following Julian's plan, I called the bank from my personal mobile during lunch. I asked to speak with the fraud department. "Good morning, this is Arthur Miller. I've noticed suspicious movements on my credit card over the last few days. Small purchases I don't recognize." I lied with a convincingly worried voice. "I need to freeze all authorized user cards on my account while you investigate." The operator, a woman named Patricia, responded with professional efficiency. "Of course, Mr. Miller. How many authorized cards are issued?" 2. One in the name of Vanessa Sanders, my wife, and another we had for emergencies. Proceeding to freeze them immediately. "Do you also wish to freeze your primary card?" "No. Just the supplementary ones for now." "Done. The cards are blocked as of this moment. Do you need to formally report fraud?" "I'm still verifying the transactions. If I confirm fraud, I'll call back." I hung up with a strange sensation of power and guilt mixed. Vanessa would discover the block probably that same day when she tried to use her card. I needed a convincing story prepared. The call came at 6:20 p.m. I was driving back from work when my phone rang, Vanessa's name illuminating the screen. "Hello," I answered with a casual tone. "Arthur, my card isn't working." Her voice sounded irritated. "I tried to pay at Whole Foods and it was declined. Is there a problem with the account?" My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "Declined? How strange. Let me check." I'm standing here in line with a full cart and the cashier looking at me weird. It's humiliating. "Calm down. I'll fix it now. Use cash for now, and when I get home I'll check the bank. Probably a system error." I heard her exasperated sigh. "Fine, but fix it fast." When I arrived home 40 minutes later, she was in the kitchen putting away groceries with an annoyed expression. I approached with the attitude of a worried husband. "I called the bank on the way," I lied smoothly. "They detected suspicious activity on the supplementary cards. Potential fraud. They blocked everything preventively while they investigate." Her expression changed from annoyance to alarm. "Fraud? What kind of fraud?" "Small purchases on websites we don't recognize. The bank says it's a common data theft pattern." I shrugged. "Matter of days while they verify. Meanwhile, we can use cash or my main card." Vanessa bit her lower lip, a gesture she made when she was annoyed but couldn't object. "How many days?" They said between 5 and 7 business days. Annoying, but necessary. "Well," she accepted finally, though her tone betrayed frustration. "I guess there's no alternative." Crisis avoided. Vanessa accepted the explanation without questioning. Why would she suspect? For 23 years, I had never given her reasons to doubt me. I executed the second transfer on Friday, November 22. Another $25,000 moving silently from our shared account to my personal refuge. Joint balance now $210,000. During that week, Julian had worked tirelessly. He summoned me to his office on Wednesday, November 20, for an update. "I got the original deed for the Miami condo," he announced, placing a document on his desk. Dated the 18th of March 2022. "Here is your signature, Mr. Miller." I read the document with fresh eyes, now understanding what I had signed blindly. Complete and voluntary quitclaim of ownership rights. The words danced on the page like accusations of my own naivety. "But here is the key," Julian continued, pointing to a specific clause. "The transfer mentions tax optimization and family estate planning. If we manage to prove that justification was fraudulent from the start, that there was never any real intention of optimization but rather preparation for divorce, we can argue fraud in the inducement. What do we need to prove that? The communications between her and Mr. Vance. The messages where they discussed divorce plans dated months before the transfer, or even better, direct references to the apartment as her future money." Julian opened his laptop. "Do you have those messages?" I searched Felix's USB drive. I found gold. A message from the 10th of February 2022, 5 weeks before the transfer. "Bruno, love, I found the perfect way. I'm going to convince Arthur to put the Miami apartment in my name. I'll tell him it's for taxes. He's so trusting he'll sign without reading. When the divorce comes, that apartment will be completely mine. $450,000 clean." I turned the screen toward Julian. He read it with a shark's smile, smelling blood. "Perfect. This demonstrates premeditation and deliberate fraud. Mr. Miller, we are going to get that apartment back." I also hired a professional appraiser, Richard Vega, a certified assessor with 30 years of experience. He came to our house on Saturday, November 23, while Vanessa was supposedly at brunch with friends, actually with Bruno, according to confirmation from Felix via vehicle GPS. Richard documented meticulously every room, every piece of furniture, every appliance. "House in excellent condition," he commented while taking photographs and notes. "Estimated current value, $620,000. Furniture and belongings approximately $20,000. I also asked him to evaluate the family vehicle, a 2021 Volkswagen Passat, or a $22,000 current market value. He ruled after a detailed inspection. Everything was documented in a professional 4-2-page report that Richard delivered to me the following Tuesday. Every asset quantified, photographed, valued legally. The third transfer was executed on Friday, November 29, $25,000 more. Joint balance $185,000. Vanessa still hadn't checked the bank statement. Her Sunday routine had been interrupted the last 2 weekends by morning outings with Bruno. But on Sunday, December 1, my luck almost ran out. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard Vanessa in the study. "Arthur, can you come here a moment?" My blood froze. I walked slowly toward the study where she was sitting in front of the computer with a confused expression. "I'm checking the bank," she said without looking up from the screen. "The balance seems low. Have we had big expenses lately?" My mind raced at supersonic speed. Dad's medical expenses, I improvised quickly. "I'm still settling final bills. The hospital, the funeral home, it all added up." "How much exactly?" Now she looked directly at me. "Like $50,000 between everything," I lied with deliberately inflated numbers. "The palliative chemo, the nursing visits, the burial. It wasn't cheap." Vanessa frowned but nodded slowly. "I guess that makes sense. Just surprised to see the number lower. Do you want to show me the invoices?" I bet boldly, knowing she never asked to see detailed documentation. "No, it's not necessary. I trust you." The words sounded so ironic coming from her mouth I almost laughed hysterically. I left the study with trembling legs. I had been seconds away from being discovered. I needed to speed up the process. I made the fourth and final transfer on Wednesday, December 4, 3 days earlier than planned, $30,000 this time, emptying my exact half of the remaining funds. Final joint balance $55,000. Vanessa's half intact, mine completely protected in an account inaccessible to her. Julian called me that same Wednesday afternoon. "Everything is ready. divorce petition prepared, documentation organized, notification to the apartment buyer drafted. When do you recommend? This week. Before she notices the financial movements, before the year closes and complicates taxes, before your resolve wavers. The time had come. After 4 weeks of perfect acting, of secret transfers, of necessary lies, the time for the final confrontation had arrived. Let's do it Friday, I decided. December 13. Friday the 13th, appropriately ominous for the day that would destroy her world, as she had planned to destroy mine. On Wednesday night, December 4, after executing the last bank transfer, I made a near-fatal mistake that could have destroyed my entire carefully built plan. It was 9:40 p.m. Vanessa had gone to the supermarket claiming to need ingredients for dinner the next day. I took advantage of her absence to organize all the documentation I would present to Julian on Friday. Bank statements, Felix's photos, message transcripts, apartment deeds, everything ordered meticulously in manila folders labeled by categories. I was so concentrated on verifying that every document was complete that I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear her steps coming up the stairs. I didn't hear anything until her voice startled me violently. "What are you doing?" I spun around so abruptly I knocked a pile of photographs off the desk. My heart beat so hard I was sure she could hear it. Vanessa was in the doorway of the study, grocery bags still in her hands, looking at me with a confused expression. On the partially visible desk was a photograph of her leaving Bruno's building. In another open folder, bank statements with figures highlighted in yellow. My entire arsenal of counterattack accidentally exposed before her eyes. "What is all this?" she repeated, now with a sharper, more suspicious tone. My mind raced. I needed a convincing lie immediately or everything would crumble. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice, while quickly closing the folders with movements attempting to appear casual. "Paperwork for Dad's estate," I improvised, mentally thanking that this was a subject I had used before. "It's incredibly complicated, Vanessa. The probate lawyer needs documentation of everything. Our bank accounts, properties, insurance. Apparently they need to verify solvency before transferring certain assets." She took 2 steps inside the study, stretching her neck to see the documents better. "Why are there photographs?" Quote, "Damn, she had seen the photos. Photographic documentation of the state of the house." I continued lying, now picking up one of the folders and holding it in a way that blocked her view of the rest. "For Dad's life insurance, they need to verify that his beneficiaries live in stable conditions. It's ridiculous, I know, but American bureaucracy is Kafkaesque." Vanessa frowned. For a terrible moment, I thought she didn't believe me. Her eyes scanned the desk, stopping on a folder labeled Chase Bank Movements 2023 to 2024. "Why do they need our bank statements for your father's inheritance?" "Asset verification," I replied immediately, improvising with growing desperation. Apparently, if the heirs have significant debts or financial problems, that affects inheritance taxes. It's absurd. But the lawyer insisted. She kept looking at me with that expression I couldn't fully decipher. Finally, she sighed. "Sounds tremendously complicated." "It is. That's why I'm so stressed lately. I took the opportunity to reinforce the narrative. Between the grief and these endless bureaucratic procedures, I feel overwhelmed." Her expression softened slightly. "Well, if you need help organizing papers, tell me." "Thanks, honey, but I think I'm almost done." I closed the last visible folder and stacked them all together. "Let me put this away and I'll come down to help you with the groceries." Vanessa nodded and left the study. I heard her steps going down the stairs, then noises in the kitchen as she put away food. I stood paralyzed for 30 full seconds, hands shaking uncontrollably. I had been inches from being discovered. If she had insisted on seeing the photographs closer, if she had picked up one of the folders, if she had read any of the message transcripts where her own name appeared constantly, everything would have ended before starting. I put every document in the leather briefcase I used for work, locked it, and hid the key in the pocket of an old coat in the closet. Then I went down to the kitchen with legs that barely held me up. Vanessa was making tea with her back to me. "Want a cup?" she asked with a casual tone. "Yes, thanks." We sat at the kitchen table with our steaming cups. She checked her phone distractedly. I observed her hands, those same hands I had held for 23 years, thinking about how they had written messages of love to another man. had caressed his face, had planned my destruction. "Arthur, are you okay?" Her voice interrupted my dark thoughts. "You look very pale, just tired. I haven't slept well lately. Should you take something? Want me to give you a Xanax?" The irony of her offering me medication to sleep when she was the cause of my insomnia almost made me laugh hysterically. "No, thanks. I prefer not to rely on pills." That night I slept barely 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her expression in the doorway of the study, asking what I was doing, what those papers were. I woke up startled, imagining scenarios where she had seen too much, understood too much, ruined everything. On Thursday, December 5, I took the briefcase with me to work and didn't leave it for a second. During lunch, I met briefly with Julian at a coffee shop near my office. "Do you have all the documentation?" he asked directly. I handed him the briefcase. "Everything is there, organized by categories." Julian opened it right there, checking the contents quickly. He nodded with professional satisfaction. "Perfect. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., a process server will come to your home to deliver divorce papers personally to your wife. You must be present. Can you arrange that?" "Yes. I'll tell her I'm coming home early from work." After the delivery of papers, she will be in shock. That is the moment where you present all the evidence we have. Don't let her control the narrative. You must maintain a position of strength. Julian looked at me intensely. "Are you prepared emotionally for this?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. "I'm ready." Friday, December 13, dawned gray and rainy, appropriate for the day that would change everything. I got up at 6 a.m. after a night almost without sleep. I weighed myself for the last time, 152 pounds. I had lost 22 pounds since Dad's death, exactly 2 months ago. Vanessa woke up at 7:30. We ate breakfast together in uncomfortable silence. She seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone, probably messages from Bruno, completely oblivious to the storm about to unleash. "I'll be home early today," I announced while putting on my jacket. "I need to resolve some personal matters." "What matters?" she asked without much interest. "Pending inheritance stuff. Nothing important." At work, it was impossible to concentrate. Every half hour I checked the clock. 11 a.m., 12:30, 1:40. Finally, at 3:10 p.m., I left the office claiming a stomachache. I arrived home at 3:35. Vanessa was on the sofa watching a TV series, completely oblivious to what was coming. "You're early," she commented without looking away from the screen. "Yes. We can talk a moment?" Something in my tone made her turn. "What's wrong? You look serious." "We have a visitor shortly. Someone needs to deliver some documents to you." "Documents? What documents?" Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. Exactly at 4 p.m. Swiss punctuality. My heart beat so hard I felt a pulse in my temples. "I'll get it," I said, walking toward the door. While Vanessa followed me with a confused expression, I opened the door. A man of about 50, gray suit, professional briefcase, greeted me formally. "Mr. Arthur Miller? Miss Vanessa Sanders?" Vanessa nodded from behind me, now clearly alarmed. "Process server. I bring legal documentation that you must sign for receipt." He extended a large envelope. "Petition for contested divorce filed by Mr. Arthur Miller against Miss Vanessa Sanders. Need signature confirming receipt." The silence that followed was absolute. I heard Vanessa gasp behind me. The server waited patiently with pen extended. Vanessa took the envelope with trembling hands. What is this, Arthur?" I turned to look at her directly for the first time. "It is exactly what it says. Divorce. Sign the receipt and then we talk." Her face had paled until it turned gray. She mechanically signed the document for the server, who thanked us politely and left, leaving us alone in the doorway of our house, the manila envelope containing her sentence floating between us like an unexploded bomb. "Come inside," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as mine. "We have a lot to talk about, Vanessa, and this time you are going to listen to every word." We closed the door and walked toward the dining room in sepulchral silence. Vanessa held the envelope as if it burned her fingers. I carried my work briefcase containing copies of all the evidence collected over weeks. We sat at opposite ends of the oak table where we had shared thousands of dinners over 23 years. Now that same table would become a courtroom where I would be judge, prosecutor, and witness. "Arthur, what the hell is happening?" Her voice trembled between disbelief and growing fear. Divorce? Where does this come from? I opened my briefcase with deliberately slow movements. I extracted the first folder labeled Infidelity, Photographic Evidence, and placed it on the table in front of her. Open it, I ordered with a voice so cold it surprised myself. Arthur, I don't understand. Open it. Her hands trembled as she lifted the cover of the folder. The first photograph clearly showed Vanessa entering the building on State Street. Date and time digitally printed in the bottom corner. Tuesday, the 21st of November, 2024, 1642. Her face lost all remaining color. I continued placing photographs one after another. Vanessa leaving the same building 3 hours later. Hair messy, adjusting her blouse. Vanessa kissing Bruno Vance passionately in the doorway. Vanessa and Bruno lunching at an intimate restaurant in the West Loop, holding hands across the table. 3 years, 4 months, and 22 days, I said with a monotone voice. Since the 14th of June, 2021, Bruno Vance, 45 years old, textile businessman. Your lover while I worked 70 hours a week to support this family. Arthur, I can explain. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but I felt no compassion whatsoever. I haven't finished yet. I extracted the second folder, Diversion of Funds. Bank statements with yellow highlighter, marking every inexplicable withdrawal. $42,000 siphoned from our joint account over 21 months. Small progressive withdrawals designed to go unnoticed. You deposited them into a secret account at Chase Bank opened on the 28th of December 2022. Current balance, $34,000. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Third folder. Miami apartment. Fraud. Preliminary sales contract dated September 12. You plan to sell our apartment for $425,000 and pocket all the money before asking me for a divorce in February. Closing date agreed, the 15th of February 2025. It's not. She started to deny. Don't interrupt me. My voice rose slightly. The transfer of the apartment to your name in March 2022 was fraud from the start. I have a message from you to Bruno dated February 10 where you discuss exactly how to deceive me into signing that deed. I placed a printout of the message on the table. Her own words condemned her. I'm going to convince Arthur to put the Miami apartment in my name. I'll tell him it's for taxes. He's so trusting he'll sign without reading. Vanessa sobbed openly now, head in her hands. Please, Arthur. Fourth folder. The most devastating. Communications and planning. Hundreds of pages of printed messages, emails, transcripts of conversations. I placed them one after another in front of her like playing cards. The workaholic idiot without a life, that's what you called me in a message on September 3. I read aloud. My ticket out. Message from October 17. When the old man dies, everything will be easier. You said that about my dying father on August 26. Every sentence was a verbal slap. Vanessa cried uncontrollably, but I continued relentless. In March we will be free and rich, far from Arthur, far from his boring, mediocre engineer life. October 28, 10 days after we buried Dad. Enough! Shouted Vanessa, getting up abruptly. Enough, please! Sit down. My voice was pure ice. The best part is still missing. I extracted the USB drive Dad had left me and connected it to my laptop. I opened the first audio file. This, I explained while it loaded, Dad recorded during his last 2 months of life. He installed a hidden recorder in his room after hearing you on the phone planning his death as a tactical advantage. 14 files. 4 hours of total recording. Let's listen to just one. I pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the dining room, clear as crystal. Bruno, my love, the old man is worse every day. The doctors say 2 months max. I need you to be patient a little longer. Yes, after this we will be free. Arthur already signed the power of attorney so I can handle his accounts if something happens to him. Vanessa covered her ears, shaking her head violently. Stop it. Turn it off. I paused the recording. Do you recognize your own voice? Do you recognize how you spoke of my dying father as an inconvenient obstacle on your path to wealth? She collapsed into the chair, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry for falling in love with another man? Or sorry for being caught? She didn't answer. She just cried and cried. Do you know what was the worst? I continued. my voice finally breaking slightly. It wasn't the adultery. It wasn't the theft. It was reading messages where you discussed whether you should increase the morphine dose for Dad to speed up the inevitable. You planned to kill him, Vanessa. You didn't do it because you feared an autopsy, not out of humanity. No. Never. Never would have. Her denial sounded hollow even to herself. It's in the messages. Everything documented. Everything saved legally. A long, heavy silence fell over the dining room. Only her broken sobs and the tick-tock of the wall clock marking seconds that seemed eternal could be heard. Finally, Vanessa lifted her destroyed face. Mascara running, eyes swollen, nose red. What is going to happen now? Judicial process, I replied coldly. Contested divorce for proven adultery and financial fraud. My lawyer already filed the petition this morning. The fraudulent sale of the apartment will be annulled. The apartment will return completely to my name. You must return the $42,000 diverted in 24 monthly installments, and you will only receive 43% of the main house, not 50%, due to the proven fraud. 43%? Why not half? Because you cheated, stole, and conspired. The judge will reduce your percentage. Julian O'Connell, my lawyer, is a specialist in these cases. He has a 92% success rate. Vanessa stood up staggering, searched for her mobile phone frantically. I need to talk to Bruno. Go ahead, I said with a bitter smile. Call him. She dialed with trembling fingers, waited once, twice, 5 times. Voicemail. She tried again. He's not going to answer, I observed with dark satisfaction. Men like Bruno Vance don't want women with legal problems, debts, and scandals. They wanted your money and your body, not your complications. As if my words had summoned it, Vanessa's phone vibrated. Text message. She read it and her face decomposed even more if that was possible. What does it say? I asked, though I already imagined it. With a broken voice, she read, I'm sorry, Vanessa. This is too complicated for me. I can't be in the middle of a conflictive divorce. It was fun while it lasted. Take care, Bruno. Vanessa dropped the phone. She collapsed into the chair completely, all fight abandoning her. I've lost everything, she whispered. Everything. No, I corrected. You threw everything in the trash. There is a difference. I stood up, gathering all the folders and putting them in the briefcase. Tonight you sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow you look for a lawyer. The process officially starts Monday. You have the weekend to process what you just lost. I walked toward the dining room door. Then I stopped and turned one last time. Oh, and Vanessa, Dad was right. You finally got what you wanted, but you didn't know what awaited you. I left her there crying alone in the dining room that had once housed dreams of a happy family, now converted into a mausoleum of destroyed lies and a stolen future that would never be hers. The judicial process began formally on Monday, the 16th of December, 2024, and extended for 6 months and 11 days of legal battle that consumed all my remaining emotional energy. Vanessa hired a lawyer the following Tuesday, Carmen Delgado, a specialist in family law with an aggressive reputation. She cost $400 an hour plus procedural expenses, money Vanessa didn't have, forcing her to take out a personal loan of $25,000 from Discover with 11% annual interest. The first hearing was held on the 8th of January 2025 in the Circuit Court of Cook County. A small room, institutional beige walls, a judge of about 60 years named Mary Stevens, who reviewed documentation with an impenetrable expression. Julian presented evidence meticulously. 47 photographs of infidelity, organized chronologically, bank statements demonstrating systematic diversion of $42,000, fraudulent contract of apartment sale, explicit messages discussing divorce plans, audio recordings where Vanessa despised our marriage. Carmen Delgado tried to argue that Dad's recordings violated privacy. Illinois is a 2-party consent state. Julian counter-argued effectively. The recordings were made in the deceased's private bedroom where he had an expectation of privacy, capturing the commission of a crime conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. Furthermore, the text messages and emails alone substantiate the fraud without the audio. Judge Stevens admitted the evidence, particularly focusing on the financial fraud. Vanessa testified on January 22. She admitted the extramarital relationship but tried to justify it, alleging emotional abandonment on my part. He worked constantly, was never present emotionally, she declared with a trembling voice. Carmen built a narrative of a lonely wife seeking human connection that a workaholic husband didn't provide. Julian destroyed that defense systematically. He presented emails where Vanessa celebrated my long work hours because they gave her freedom to see Bruno. He showed messages where she rejected my invitations to romantic dinners or weekend getaways, alleging tiredness, when in reality she was meeting her lover. Miss Sanders was not seeking emotional connection, argued Julian coldly. She was seeking a financial strategy. The battle for the Miami apartment was particularly brutal. Carmen argued the quitclaim deed was voluntary, signed before a notary, legally valid. Julian presented the message from the 10th of February 2022, where Vanessa explicitly confessed her intention to deceive me. He's so trusting he'll sign without reading. Fraud in the inducement, argued Julian. My client was deliberately deceived about the real purpose of the transfer. It was not legitimate tax planning, but premeditated preparation for subsequent fraud. On March 3, after reviewing all documentation for weeks, Judge Stevens issued a resolution on the apartment. It is demonstrated that the transfer of the property located in Miami was obtained through deliberate deceit with the purpose of subsequent marital fraud. The quitclaim deed of the 18th of March, 2022, is annulled. The property returns entirely to the ownership of Mr. Arthur Miller. Vanessa cried audibly in the courtroom when she heard the verdict. She had lost $450,000 in a bang of the judicial gavel. Immediately, we notified the buyer who had signed the preliminary contract, Richard Fields, a businessman who had paid a deposit of $15,000. Initially, he threatened to sue us, but when Julian showed him the judicial resolution and evidence of fraud, he desisted. He recovered his deposit minus notary expenses. He lost $2,000 in total but avoided buying a property with legal defects. Vanessa had to return those $15,000. She had already spent money she didn't have, forcing her to request a second personal loan of $15,000, this time with 13% interest because her credit rating had worsened. The division of remaining assets was resolved on April 15. Main house appraised at $620,000. Volkswagen Passat appraised at $22,000. Furniture and belongings valued at $20,000. Carmen argued for an equitable 50-over-50 split. Julian counter-argued, based on proven dissipation of assets, spending marital funds on the affair, and fraud. Judge Stevens, after a deliberation of 40 minutes, ruled. Considering the gravity of the prolonged adultery, the systematic diversion of marital funds, and the premeditated planning of fraud, Miss Sanders is awarded 43% of the common assets. Mr. Miller will receive 57%. Vanessa received $266,600 from the house, $9,460 from the vehicle, $8,600 from the furniture. Total, $284,600. I received the house complete, forcing me to buy out her share. Vehicle complete, paying her portion. Furniture, plus the Miami apartment entirely recovered. Total net worth roughly $1 million. But the money was only part of her destruction. The social consequences were devastating for Vanessa. The scandal leaked inevitably. First among close acquaintances when we both hired lawyers and subpoenas began. Then more widely when mutual friends asked what had happened. Helen and Mark Davis, a couple we had dined with monthly for 8 years, called me in February. Art, is it true what we heard? Vanessa was unfaithful? I told them the summarized truth. 3 days later, Vanessa called me crying. Helen blocked me on WhatsApp. Mark told half the neighborhood what happened. They are treating me like a leper. Other friends from the social circle reacted similarly. Of 30 shared friends, 27 took my side. Only 3 maintained neutral contact with both. Her own mother, Eleanor Sanders, 71, found out in March when Vanessa needed to ask her to borrow money. The phone conversation I heard fragmented from the adjacent room was brutal. "You did what?" Eleanor shouted with a voice that betrayed absolute disappointment. "You cheated on Arthur for 3 years? You stole money from him? Vanessa, I raised you better than this." Mother and daughter didn't speak for 8 months after that call. Bruno Vance, as anticipated, disappeared completely from her life. Even more, apparently he told details of the affair to their shared business circle. Vanessa's reputation was destroyed in environments where she occasionally moved. Economically, her situation worsened catastrophically. With the $284,600 obtained from the division, she paid her lawyer $35,000 in final fees. She paid off personal loans, $40,000 total with interest. She returned the $42,000, diverted in accelerated initial installments to avoid criminal charges. She had approximately $167,000 left. With that, she rented a small apartment in Cicero, a working-class suburb far from the prosperous Chicago she had known. 2 bedrooms, 600 square feet, $1,100 a month. For the first time in 21 years, Vanessa needed to work. She got a job as a sales associate at a Gap store in the Woodfield Mall. Salary $16 an hour, roughly $2,600 a month gross, 40 hours a week, including weekends. I saw her once by chance in June, 4 months after the divorce was finalized. I was buying a gift for Monica at that same mall. Vanessa was folding t-shirts on a shelf, corporate black uniform, hair tied back, without the elaborate makeup she used to wear. She had aged visibly. Her hair showed gray roots she didn't bother to dye, deep wrinkles around her eyes and mouth. She had gained weight, approximately 25 pounds by my estimate, posture hunched of someone defeated by life. Our eyes met for 3 seconds. She paled, dropped the t-shirt she was holding. I simply nodded briefly and continued walking. I felt no satisfaction, only emptiness. As for me, I sold the Naperville house in May for $650,000 after minor improvements. I paid Vanessa her $266,600 share, keeping $383,400 net. I sold the Miami apartment in June for $460,000, $10,000 more than the original appraisal, thanks to a favorable real estate market. Total liquid after all transactions to $840,000 plus my retirement accounts. I bought a modern condo in Wicker Park, a trendy neighborhood near where Dad had lived. 2 bedrooms, 1,000 square feet, balcony with views, $450,000. I invested the rest of the money conservatively in index funds and government bonds, but financial victory didn't fill the emotional void. Lonely nights in the new apartment were a constant reminder of 23 lost years. It has been 7 months since the divorce was finalized officially on the 27th of June 2025. Today, at my 53 years just turned in October, I live in my Wicker Park condo, surrounded by silence, which is sometimes peace and other times penetrating loneliness. I recovered the lost weight gradually. Now I weigh 170 pounds, still a few less than before Dad's death, but healthy. The dark circles disappeared. I sleep 6 hours on average, better than the 3 during those dark months. Vanessa tried to contact me 5 times between July and September. 3 phone calls I didn't answer, 2 WhatsApp messages I read but ignored. The first message sent on July 12 at 10:43 p.m. said, "Arthur, I know I have no right to ask you anything, but can we talk? I need to tell you something important." I deleted it without responding. The second message arrived on September 3. "I've had a lot of time to think. I was terribly wrong. Is there any possibility of starting over? Not as a couple necessarily, but maybe as friends eventually. I miss your presence in my life." That last sentence provoked a bitter laugh. She missed my presence because she missed financial stability, the comfortable house, the life without economic worries that I provided while she planned my destruction. I blocked her definitely on September 4. There were no more attempts after that. My sister Monica visited me in August and again in October. During the second visit, while we had dinner at an Italian restaurant near my apartment, she observed me with sisterly concern. "Are you really okay, Art?" she asked, putting her fork down on the plate of pasta. "And don't tell me yes automatically. I want an honest answer." I considered lying. Then I decided against it. I'm functional. I work, I eat, I sleep, I exist. But something inside me changed permanently, Monica. The capacity to trust another person fully, to give myself emotionally without reservations, died along with that marriage. She took my hand across the table. "Dad did the right thing protecting you. You know that, right?" "I know. But sometimes I wonder if ignorance would have been less painful than this brutal clarity." "Do you really believe that?" She was right. I didn't believe it. Discovering the truth, however devastating, was better than continuing to live a lie. Dad's ashes rest in a special urn I bought in March, handcrafted ceramic, cobalt blue with silver inlays forming the constellation of Orion, his favorite. I keep it on a shelf in the living room, next to a framed photograph of him smiling at my wedding. An ironic reminder of how that celebration of eternal love ended in legally documented betrayal. Sometimes I talk to him. "Thanks, Dad," I whisper, on particularly lonely nights. "Thanks for seeing it when I was blind. Thanks for protecting me even from your deathbed." He won this final battle even after leaving. Salvador Miller died on the 14th of October 2024, but his last action of paternal love resonated for months afterward, unmasking a fraud that would have destroyed my financial and emotional life completely. At work, I was promoted to senior project manager in April. Salary increase of $15,000 annually. Private office, more responsibilities. The irony is not lost on me. I finally obtained the professional recognition that Vanessa despised as a boring, mediocre engineer life. I went on 2 dates since the divorce. One in August with an HR colleague named Beatrice, 39, divorced with no kids. Pleasant dinner, fluid conversation. But when she tried to kiss me goodbye, I felt inexplicable panic. I haven't called her back. Second date in October with a math teacher named Laura, 47, a widow. 3 hours in a coffee shop chatting about literature, travel, philosophy, intelligent, attractive, genuinely interesting. When she suggested seeing each other again, I invented excuses about piled-up work. I'm not ready. Perhaps I never will be completely. The therapist I started seeing in June, a psychologist named Dr. Teresa Rowland, says I need time to heal deep wounds. Betrayal of this magnitude is not overcome in months, she explained during a September session. It can take years to rebuild the capacity for trust. Be patient with yourself. I try to be. Some days are better than others. The strange thing about all this is that technically I won. I recovered the Miami apartment, obtained a larger percentage of marital assets. Vanessa lost practically everything: money, reputation, relationship with Bruno, friends, relationship with her mother for months, the comfortable life she had known for 2 decades. I should feel complete satisfaction. Justice was served in a devastating way. But while I sit on the balcony of my apartment this cold November night, observing the lights of Chicago twinkling in the distance, I don't feel triumph. I feel the deep weariness of a warrior who won the battle but lost something fundamental in the process. 23 years of my life were a lie, almost a quarter of a century invested in a person who saw me as an exploitable resource, not as a beloved partner. Those years don't return. That time is not recovered. I am 53 years old, nearly $1 million in assets, a paid-off apartment, successful career, reasonable health. Objectively, I am well-positioned for the next chapter of life. Subjectively, I carry an invisible scar that will never heal completely. I mistrust genuine, affectionate gestures because I remember fake gestures. I analyze sweet words searching for underlying manipulation. I maintain emotional walls that didn't exist before. Vanessa, according to information Felix occasionally passes me without me asking, continues working at the Gap. She lives alone in her Cicero apartment, has no known partner, has lost contact with most previous friends. She looks, according to Felix's description, defeated and considerably aged. Part of me, a small and dark part I'm not proud to acknowledge, feels satisfaction for that. Karmic justice worked. She destroyed her own life with her choices. But a larger part, the part Dad cultivated in me throughout my childhood, only feels sadness for the human waste all this represented. I could have had a real marriage. She could have been honest if she wasn't happy. We could have divorced civilly years ago if things weren't working. Instead, she chose betrayal, fraud, conspiracy, and those choices destroyed her while leaving me with a hollow victory. I get up from the balcony, enter the apartment, approach Dad's urn, touch the cold ceramic with fingers that now have wrinkles more marked than a year ago. Was it worth it, Dad? I asked the silence. To win, but lose faith in humanity in the process? To recover money, but lose the capacity to love without reservations? The silence doesn't answer. But I imagine his hoarse and wise voice. Son, it's not about if it was worth it. It's about you deserving to know the truth. You deserved justice. You deserved not to be destroyed by the one you swore to protect. The rest, the pain, the scars, the skepticism that is the price of having loved genuinely while others feigned. Maybe he's right. I prepare to sleep. Tomorrow is Monday. There is an important project at work. Life continues with routines and responsibilities that don't wait for complete emotional processing. While I turn off lights, I think about the final lesson this experience taught me. Strategic silence beats noisy manipulation. Patient observation defeats rushed conspiracy. And true paternal love transcends even death, protecting when physical arms can no longer do so. Dad won this war from his grave. He saved me when he could no longer speak, and I, Arthur Miller, survived to tell the story of how a mediocre engineer demonstrated that underestimating the quiet man is the most costly mistake a traitor can make. I sleep finally with something resembling peace. If you like this story, support us with a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave us your opinions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box appearing on the left. Thanks for joining us.